Chapter 90, Elemental Crystals. Wind Training Room. Fujin meditated for an hour, before waking up. He kept sitting on the mat while being very confused. What's this strange feeling that I kept getting the whole time? It's as if my wind affinity is increasing. Or perhaps my wind chakra is becoming more potent. Either way, it should be very good for my wind element. But how? He meditated again, and spread his chakra field throughout the room. Nothing here. His chakra field then expanded into the walls, floor, and ceiling of the room. And he noticed, what's this? It looks like there's a stone with a high amount of wind chakra in it. And it's very dense. It looks like while meditating here, we absorb chakra from it in small amounts. That's why I got that weird feeling. Fujin got off the mat and made a hand seal. Earth Military Movement Jutsu. He entered the floor. On entering the floor, he could see a lot of seals, and inside the seal was a green crystal. Fujin analyzed, probably not a good idea to test these seals. But the crystal has very dense wind chakra. And it looks like it can help make our wind element stronger. Is this chakra metal? Or something else like an ore? Well, let's call it the wind chakra crystal for now. The important question is, can I absorb it faster? And, how can I get more of them? Also, I need to check whether all other elemental training rooms have something similar. He went above the floor and thought, I should have dinner for now. After dinner, I'll check if I can absorb this energy rapidly. I wonder what benefits I'll get from this. Though I should also be careful in case it's harmful to absorb it in excess. He left for dinner. He met Hoka and Miko there. They had a small chat. The Chinins in the tower also introduced themselves and had small talks with the Genins. After dinner, Fujin returned to the wind training room. He began meditating and tried absorbing as much energy as he could from the wind chakra crystal. While meditating, his entire focus was on the wind chakra crystal and its energy. In the first 6 hours, he didn't have much success. However, sometime after that, he began steadily absorbing energy from the crystal. He lost himself in meditation, completely losing the sense of time. When he opened his eyes, it was already 7 a.m. Fujin analyzed, I didn't have much success initially. But I think I managed to use up 1% of the energy of the crystal in this meditation session. I wonder if this absorption rate is fast or slow. And how often does Konoha switch or recharge this crystal? That aside, unlike what I previously thought, I don't absorb energy from the crystal directly. Rather, it refines my chakra. I have a feeling that I'll have a slightly easier time performing wind jutsus. He frowned, though improvement would likely be very minimal. I'll need to use up more energy from this wind chakra crystal to get a proper idea. I have a feeling that I might need a mountain of such crystals to get a significant boost. That aside, it feels really good to train here. I ended up meditating all night and skipping my sleep, but I don't feel very tired at all. Though I should take a nap tonight. Meditation, though good, can't entirely replace sleep. After analyzing, he got up and left the room. While leaving the floor, he came across Sam. She was surprised to see Fujin on the second floor. Her eyes twitched and she asked, were you training the whole night? Fujin laughed awkwardly and rubbed the back of his head, no. I was meditating in the wind training room. And I ended up falling asleep there. Sam's eyes twitched even more. She sighed and said, it's good to train hard, but don't forget to rest. Or else, the training can be counterproductive. Fujin immediately replied, yes ma'am, while thinking, that's the first time I haven't heard her yell. He left, got freshened up, had a huge breakfast, and returned to the wind training room. After knowing that Fujin returned to the wind training room, Tsum realized, he is an orphan. He has probably never experienced such rooms. No wonder he is training in that room. I should report this to the third. He'll be happy to know how hard some kids are training. He spends the next couple of days in the wind training room. Though he went out regularly for food and sleep. As he meditated more in that room, he managed to use up the energy at a faster rate. By the end of the third day, he had used up 18% energy from the crystal. He analyzed, good, it is getting faster. I have a feeling that it'll be even faster tomorrow. But, it seems like my analysis was right. While this definitely is good, I'll need a mountain of such crystals to actually get significant boosts. I wonder how many crystals Konoha has. And where they are kept. Another point to consider is how much energy from this crystal was already exhausted before I began training here. On day 4, as he predicted, his efficiency suddenly increased a lot. In around 12 hours, he ended up using up almost half the energy from the crystal. However, on this day, he noticed one crucial point. Fujin realized, my chakra increased? Yeah, I can feel it. Though the increase is very minimal, not even 0.1%, it did go up. Damn, now I really want to find a mountain of such crystals. Where are these found? He calmed himself down and decided, lucky, this crystal's efficiency hasn't reduced. I guess this is due to the seals. But I should stop here. I might be able to completely exhaust this crystal before this round ends. But if my speed of using this energy is higher than normal, then I'll get a lot of unneeded energy. I should check out the other rooms and see if they have similar crystals, and if I can refine my chakra with their energy as well. After dinner, he went to the Earth training room. On entering, he used Earth military movement jutsu and went underground to check. As I thought, a similar crystal with dense Earth chakra is here. But, the amount of chakra seems low. It has only about 15% of the chakra as compared to what the wind chakra crystal had. He thought for a bit and concluded, makes sense I guess. There are barely any ninjas with the wind element in Konoha, while quite a few have the earth element. So this room ended up being used a lot more. He sat on the mat and spent his entire night meditating in that room. He opened his eyes at 6:30 a.m. and sighed, I thought since I managed to increase the speed of consuming the energy of wind chakra crystal, I'd be able to do the same for the rest. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. I have to start from the beginning. Worst of all, my rate of consuming energy from earth chakra crystal is very low. I think it is just around 5 to 6% of what it was when I started with wind chakra crystal. Does this mean that the speed will depend on my affinity towards each element? It went fast for wind chakra crystal because my affinity is wind. But for earth chakra crystal, my affinity is very low. He analyzed a bit, wait, does this mean that I can analyze my affinity to other elements depending on how quickly I can use up the energy of each crystal? Yeah, that should be the case. I should check out the other 3 rooms. After having breakfast, Fujin went to the fire training room. Here he followed all the procedures as usual. However, when he checked the fire chakra crystal, he was shocked. The fire chakra crystal has 25% more energy than the wind chakra crystal. How? Shouldn't Konoha be full of ninjas with fire affinity? Could it be that the previous fire chakra crystal got used up and they replaced it with a new one? After thinking for a bit, he nodded, yeah, that should be the case. He began meditating. He got up before lunch and analyzed, oh, my fire affinity seems to be decent. At least it's much better than Earth. The absorption speed here is at 35% compared to what I could do at the start with Wind Chakra Crystal. After lunch, he went to the water training room. He first checked the amount of energy in the water crystal. It was around 30% of what the Wind Chakra Crystal had. Fujin sat in meditation and meditated till 4 p.m. At 4 p.m., he got up and sweated a bit. I couldn't refine shit. I didn't manage to use up any energy at all. He sighed, does this mean that I have no talent in the water element at all? A shame. I was hoping to have a good affinity for the water element and to take over Tobirama's jutsus. After taking a small break for eating, he went to the lighting training room thinking, my main affinity is wind. So I don't really have much hope for the lightning element. Oh well, let's test it out. A/N, I'll give the exact details regarding elemental crystals a few chapters later. I don't think these were available in canon. So all this is made up for this FIC. Chapter 91, Second Nature Affinity. The lightning chakra crystal had 80% of the energy that the wind chakra crystal did. Fujin meditated for 4 hours. After waking up, he was surprised, wow. I never expected to have the highest affinity to lightning after wind. The speed was about 62 to 63% when compared to the wind at the start. To think my top 2 affinities were the 2 most rare elements in Konoha. That said, I wonder if my speed of refining my chakra with the help of this crystal will increase similar to what happened with the wind chakra crystal. He kept sitting there and thinking. After a few minutes, he concluded, lightning is a very strong element. But, how far can I take it? I'm confident that with enough time, I can master Chidori. Though I may not be able to use it while running at high speeds. But the more important question is, can I master lightning armor like Raikage? Also, how should I go about it? He could dodge freaking Amaterasu. So I don't think it's something as simple as just cloaking the body with lightning chakra armor. Also, considering that no one apart from Raikage managed to learn it, it's safe to say that it is very dangerous to learn it. He thought for a bit more, before getting up and sighing, I need to somehow check whether Konoha has any details regarding this. If not, then the only choice will be to sneak into Hidden Cloud and read or steal all their scrolls. Unfortunately, that isn't something I'd do before I become a rank S ninja myself and have excellent means of escaping. I hope the Uchiha with their Sharinans manage to copy at least some details and pass the information to the village. Would be quite a challenge otherwise. Also, considering some of the crazy plans that I made that day, I should keep my lightning element a secret. In the future, that might help more. But, if I keep it a secret, it'll be hard to get anyone's help. So what to do? He kept thinking hard while walking to the dining room. In the end, he decided, my wind element is quite strong. Lightning won't be able to match it at least until I can learn Rankajutsus. So it won't be much help for me in the short term in any case. So let's just hide it. I'll take as much help as the village can give me for my wind element. And my lightning element will be my hidden element, which I'll use when I don't want to expose my identity. I can also use it to catch the enemy by surprise and kill them if there are no witnesses. Fujin entered the dining room while still in deep thought. He grabbed a plate, served himself the food, and sat down at the table while still in his thoughts. After deciding, he was about to think more when he felt, why does it feel like dozens of eyes are staring at me? He looked around him and noticed that the 6 Kiri Genins were sitting opposite him. He noticed that all 6 had dark bags under their eyes. And they all had a lot of injuries to which were given first aid. The Chinins, who were incredibly bored over these 5 days, were paying close attention. They hoped to get some entertainment. Miko and Hoka wondered if they could get into a fight. Fujin looked at the Miss Genins and said, "Hey. When did you guys pass?" All the Kiri Genins were incredibly pissed at Fujin. They spent over 4 days on full alert, waiting for an ambush that never came. They barely got any sleep. Even when they slept, they were on high alert. When they arrived at the tower, the Konoha Chinins all gave them weird looks due to those huge dark bags under everyone's eyes. Yumi controlled herself and replied, "An hour ago." "You." Fujin began eating again and replied without looking, "Oh, we passed in the first hour itself." "Asshole. Fucking bastard. Motherfucker. Fucking asshole. Son of a bitch. I'm gonna beat him up." Every single Kiri Genin cursed him. Of course, they didn't say it out loud as they were surrounded by Konoha ninjas. But everyone could notice the killing intent leaking out of them. One Chinin whispered to another, "Hey, what do you think Fujin did to them that they all want to swallow him whole?" The other Chinin replied, "Who knows? But if looks could kill, Fujin would have died 1,000 deaths by now." Miko and Hoka too wondered, why are they so pissed at Fujin and not at us? After all, we were there as well. Soon they both realized, wait. Fujin still had his clones chasing them. I completely forgot about them. Don't tell me he fought them with his clones. They looked at the Kiri Genins and realized that was indeed the case. Both were incredibly annoyed, this asshole. He didn't let us fight and fought them himself. Both snorted and looked away from Fujin while pouting. Some and a few Genins noticed this. They wondered, now even his teammates are mad at him. What did he do? Fujin ignored them all as he didn't particularly care. He was wondering how many elemental chakra crystals he should ask from Hiruzen as a reward for coming first. As for what happened in the Forest of Death, the forest became very active from day 2. Though the forest was huge, almost every team had a sensor. So they eventually end up fighting. The ones who had it the worst was the AIM team, as they didn't have any sensor. They kept getting attacked again and again, but they stubbornly managed to hold onto their scrolls. By day 3 ended, except for the Nara Yamanaka Akimika team, all other teams had fought multiple times. The Kiri teams were the unluckiest. Every time they fought, they were on high alert for an ambush. So they could never give their 100%. They still won every fight, but the opponents used to retreat every time. And whenever they tried to give chase, they would be attacked by the wild beasts from the forest, delaying them just enough to lose sight of their enemies. So they were very annoyed. On day 4, 2 scrolls were successfully seized. The Kiri team managed to defeat the Suna team and got their Heaven's Scroll. While the Nara Yamanaka Akimika team, who had healed up, sneak attacked the AIM squad and got their Earth Scroll. On day 5, the Kiri Genins managed to find the AIM squad and fought them once again. They defeated the AIM team, only to discover that they didn't have scrolls. The Hyuga squad noticed this fight and waited till the Kiri Genins put their guard down and attacked. Unfortunately for them, the Kiri Genins were always on guard. They lost and couldn't escape this time. They accepted their loss and handed them the Earth Scroll. The Kiri Genins were instructed not to kill any Genins if they could avoid killing them. So they didn't kill anyone and just took their scrolls. Now, the Kiri Genins had all the required scrolls and decided to head to the tower. En route, they were ambushed by the last Konoha team. The Kiri Genins were very exhausted and took a beating. But they managed to escape to the tower. The last 2 teams with the scrolls will search for each other all night, but they won't see each other and only end up fighting against teams who don't have any scrolls. On the last day, when only 30 minutes were left for the exam to end, the fourth squad from Konoha noticed that 4 teams were waiting near the tower. The Nara Yamanaka Akimika lied that they didn't have any scrolls, and managed to convince others to ally. Unfortunately, the last team had fought against the Hyuga and Suna teams in the night and had no chakra to continue. They hid in the forest and gave up on the exam. So, only 3 teams passed the second round. Chapter 92, Matchups. At morning 10 a.m. on the last day, Fujin, Hoka, Miko, and the 6 Kiri genins left the tower and focused outside the tower. They noticed that 4 teams were waiting there. The teams noticed them as well and realized that Nara Minori was speaking the truth. However, other than Nara's team, the other 3 teams were on alert to prevent one of them from suddenly running to the tower. Unfortunately, the last team never turned up, so they all were disqualified. Since no fight happened, the uninvited audience was disappointed. The Chunins asked those 4 teams to enter the tower, as they all looked exhausted and wounded. Sometime later, the last team also entered the tower. Some gathered everyone in the large hall where the preliminaries were usually held. She announced, "The teams who pass stand here. Soon Lord Hokage will arrive, and address you." All 9 genins stood in a disciplined manner, while the remaining 15 genins stood far away. Fujin looked at them and thought, "I'm surprised that no one died. It seems like Kirinins are here to create a good relationship. So they didn't kill anyone." The Chunin stood around the hall, and some Jounin sensei began appearing. They stood along with their genin squads. The 2 Kiri Jounins also stood there. Fujin observed both of them, but couldn't recognize either of them. Soon the 3rd Hokage arrived. He was accompanied by 4 Umbu and a few Jounins including Renjiro and Genki. Renjiro smiled and nodded at his squad. He had heard that they broke the records by a huge margin. Fujin observed them. Genki is standing with all the Jounins. Did he get promoted? Or is he here just because his students are here? As for the Umbu, one looks to be Kakashi. I can't identify the rest. As Fujin was observing everyone, Hiruzen stepped in front of them. Some announced, "Pay attention you brats. Now, Lord Hokage will explain the details about the 3rd phase of the Chunin exam." Hiruzen stood in front of the kids and got a good look at them. "Only 3 genins from our village passed. Kiri has 6. Looks like the rebel faction really wants to create a good image. Well, I can let them win this one. So their leader will owe us one. Even if they win, considering that they are at war, they won't be able to steal Konoha's missions." After a minute he spoke, "Congrats on passing the second round." He then looked at Fujin, Hoka, and Miko and said, "Congrats to you guys for breaking the record to become the fastest team to pass the second round." On hearing that, the genins, who failed, were shocked. After all, they were the youngest team. The Kiri genins and Jounins also looked at them. Though the Kiri genins were looking at Fujin while cursing him a few more times. However, Fujin was very excited on hearing that. "Marvelous. I didn't think he'd say this. Now I can ask it without any awkwardness. It'll feel natural too." Hiruzen continued, "Before I explain the 3rd phase, I will explain to you the true reason for these Chunin exams." He explained the details regarding how the exam is a replacement for war and why the genins need to give their best, similar to the way he did in the manga. Everyone paid attention. Fujin paid careful attention as well, however for a different reason. He was picking up points he could use later to compel Hiruzen. After Hiruzen was done speaking, Fujin sighed internally, I barely remember any dialogues from Naruto anime or manga now. Other than the important events in every arc, I have sort of forgotten everything. Can't really help it, I guess. After all, I didn't watch Naruto for years even in my previous life. After Hiruzen was done explaining, Inoichi Yamanaka stepped forward and said, I will be the proctor for the third round. I will now explain the details. The third round will be a simple tournament. The tournament will be held after 1 month, in front of many important dignitaries like Kage and daimyos. You will fight against each other alone. Your team won't be able to help you anymore. If you lose any fight, you'll be eliminated, while the winners will get to fight other winners. Hearing this, some of the genins got excited to show off their skills. Fujin looked at his teammates. Both were incredibly excited. He wondered, what's so exciting about being made to fight for the entertainment of some rich old people? On Kiri's side, Rentaro looked very excited. He looked at Fujin and thought, just win till you fight me. I'll pay you back 100 times for the 4 sleepless nights you put me through. Inoichi then picked up a box and said, everyone, pick 1 piece of paper each from this box. Everyone picked up 1 folded piece of paper. After picking up the paper, Fujin stood next to Miko. Inoichi said, open it and tell me the numbers on your paper, starting from 1. Sakayumi, 1. Shiro Sara, 2. Hyagahoka, 3. Matsushita Satoru, 4. Kido Kohaku, 5. Uchiha Miko, 6. Satsuma Rentaro, 7. Suzuki Fujin, 8. Yuki Shin, 9. Inoichi noted down everyone's names next to numbers and showed a chart showing the matchups. He announced, the matchups are, Sakayumi vs Shiro Sara, Hyagahoka vs Matsushita Satoru, and Kido Kohaku vs Uchiha Miko. Since we have 9 members, the number 8 and 9 will have to fight 1 additional time. So, the first match of the tournament will be Suzuki Fujin vs Yuki Shin. And their winner will fight against Satsuma Rentaro. Fujin thought, 1 additional match. Shouldn't be an issue, I guess. That said, why are my matchups so freaking difficult? Ice release in the first round. Then Rentaro, who looks to be the strongest among the Kiri genins. That will be followed up by Miko. All 3 might be tough fights. However, in the finals, I should be fighting with Hoka. That will be an easy fight if I still have chakra left by then. Others too were thinking about their matchups. Inoichi asked, any doubts? Shiro Sara asked, since this is a tournament, can only 1 person become a Chunin? Fujin looked at him and wondered, like Hiruzen's speeches, is this question also asked every single time? Inoichi shook his head and answered, no, we will promote you to Chunin depending on your performance in the fights. If you perform well, you may be promoted even if you don't win any fights. So there's a chance that every one of you gets promoted. And a chance that none of you do. Any more questions? No one raised any questions. So Fujin raised his hand and said, I have a question for Lord Hokage. Inoichi was surprised. Renjiro raised his eyebrow wondering what his student wanted to ask. While Genki was having a very bad feeling, he isn't going to. Is he? Hiruzen gave a kind smile and said, go ahead and ask Fujin. Fujin looked at Hiruzen smiling and put up a very innocent smile on his face as well. He asked very innocently, Lord Hokage, since my team broke the previous record for the second round by such a huge margin, do we get any rewards? Chapter 93, Don't Underestimate Wild Old Foxes. Senju Renjiro's eyes twitched. Genki was horrified. Inoichi, some, Illumi, Umbu guards, Jounin senseis, and the Chunin instructors were dumbfounded. Any rewards? Since when did Lord Hokage begin giving rewards? The genins from Kiri began wondering. Genins from Konoha get rewards for such little things. Kiri genins looked at Hiruzen with longing in their eyes. Their own cage haunted them, while the cage of Konoha rewarded their own genins. They thought, the difference between the two cages is like the difference between heaven and hell. While the other genins wondered, there's a reward for breaking records. Miko and Hoka too stared at Fujin. Miko frowned. I didn't hear Itaka getting any rewards. I'm an Uchiha, I don't need any rewards. Hiruzen too was dumbfounded. His expression didn't change, but he was left speechless for a minute. Genki yelled in his mind, even Lord Hokage is speechless. Hiruzen began remembering the scene when Fujin asked him for chakra metal swords. His eyebrows twitched. Last time he asked for chakra metal swords. What does he want this time? A house made of chakra metal. Hiruzen didn't know how close he was to guessing the truth. If he did, who knows how he would have reacted? He was about to say no when he saw the frown on Miko, who was standing right next to Fujin. He thought, does she also expect a gift? The relationship between the village and Uchiha has been deteriorating day by day. I could use this opportunity to reward her and mend the ties a bit. If it results in the ties improving, then it'll be very good for Konoha. As Fujin expected, Hiruzen decided to reward them. He was about to reply in the affirmative when he felt a chill running down his spine. Hiruzen was a veteran of all three ninja wars. He had fought a lot on the front lines and spread terror among his enemies. However, this was a feeling he only felt when he was about to step into a trap. His eyes went back to the genin standing next to Miko with an innocent smile and an expectant look on his face. He said, yes. Your team will be rewarded for breaking this record. He smiled kindly and said, you guys will receive your rewards on the day of the tournament in front of everyone. This left everyone dumbfounded once again. Fujin too was left speechless. WTF? He will reward us? Meaning that we can't ask for any particular reward? That's bullshit. Fujin maintained his smiling face and bowed, thank you, Lord Hokage. However, his thoughts were the opposite. Sigh, I underestimated him. Old Fox didn't give me any opportunity to ask for any particular reward. This way he gets to improve his image while giving us something that won't cost him. He looked back up at Hiruzen and thought, monkey summon doesn't suit him. He should switch to the fox. The Chinins and Jounins were completely lost at what was happening. Genki was shocked again. He agreed to reward them. Renjiro and the rest wondered, what is happening here exactly? Itaka, who was one of those four Umbu, thought. I didn't get any reward last year. But on thinking more he realized, is Lord Hokage rewarding so that he could reward Uchiha Miko and thaw the relations between the village and the Uchiha clan? While everyone was confused, Hiruzen looked at Inoichi. He noticed and said, since there are no more doubts, you are dismissed. Use this month to prepare properly for your fights. The Jounin sensei began taking over the genins. Renjiro approached his students and said, follow me. Fujin, Hoka, and Miko followed him. The group went to their usual training ground. On reaching there, Renjiro looked at Fujin and asked, so, what was that? Fujin asked back, that. Renjiro squinted his eyes and said, the reward. Fujin tilted his head and replied, well, we were rewarded for ranking first in the academy. I assumed that the same would apply even this time. Lines immediately appeared on Renjiro's head. He thought, I need to educate this brat. He ignored it for now and said, Congrats on making it to the third round. Though it shouldn't be a surprise, I suppose. We will now decide how to train for the next month. He looked at Miko and Hoka and said, I had a chat with your parents. They said that they want to train you themselves for the next month. They will be taking the entire month off to train you too. Miko and Hoka immediately got excited. Renjiro smiled on seeing their reactions. He said, train hard you too. I would love to see my students as both finalists. You can leave. They both thanked him. Before leaving, Miko looked at Fujin and said, win your 2 matches and fight me. This time I will defeat you. Fujin grinned and said, don't worry. I'll win the whole tournament. She was annoyed at Fujin's confidence, but she grinned in response. Both Hoka and Miko left. Renjiro looked at Fujin and asked, so, any plans for this month? Fujin shook his head. Renjiro smiled and asked, prepared for a month of deadly training. Fujin grinned and replied, of course. Renjiro asked, before we begin, do you have anything you want to try or any doubts? Fujin thought for a bit and said, I don't have any new ideas to try. I do have a question though. Are you aware of the training rooms on the 2nd floor of the tower inside the Forest of Death? Renjiro thought for a bit and replied, I have never used them. But I did hear about them. What about them? Fujin answered, they have a wind training room, earth training room, and training room for other natures too. I inspected those rooms and noticed that each room has a crystal, which has dense energy belonging to that nature. Can you tell me what those crystals are? Renjiro was surprised at that question. He answered, those are elemental crystals. Known as fire crystal, wind crystal, and so on. They provide some help to increase our affinity to that nature. It's helpful if you meditate in such rooms. Unfortunately, they are very rare and costly. So it isn't that useful. Fujin thought, just increase the affinity. No, I definitely felt a minute increase in my chakra level. So why didn't he feel it? It's either that he isn't telling me the whole thing, or his rate of refining chakra was too slow and he didn't feel anything. After all, it was only when the rate of using its energy increased many folds, that I could feel it. Fujin asked, how rare and how costly are they? Renjiro chuckled and replied, only the Hokage and major clans can buy them. That's how rare they are. As for price, every piece of crystal costs millions of ryo. Fujin was shocked, millions. Renjiro laughed lightly at his student's reaction. However, he soon heard him sighing and muttering. I was planning to ask Lord Hokage for a few thousand wind crystals as the reward. Renjiro was flabbergasted on hearing that, a few thousand. He looked at Fujin and asked, do you think they grow on trees? Fujin looked back and purposefully gave a look, as if asking, they don't. Renjiro's face was full of black lines again. Chapter 94, History Lesson, Elemental Crystals. Fujin asked Renjiro, where and how are those elemental crystals produced? Renjiro sighed and said, you seem to be fixated upon this. Alright, I'll explain everything about it. Elemental crystals are mined from crystal veins. Hundreds of years ago, these lands were full of such veins. Actually, the way the lands were named was based on which types of veins were most abundant in those areas. For instance, the land of fire was abundant in fire crystal veins. The elemental crystals provided huge help to ninjas. So they were mined extensively. Around 100 years ago, all veins began drying up. From what I have heard, the drying of the veins caused conflicts to intensify during that period, as everyone began fighting for it. By the time the 5 great villages came into existence, all the veins had been used up and destroyed. However, even after they were destroyed, the land still kept having more ninjas with similar affinities. Lord II did research regarding this and concluded that the environment of Land of Fire is such that the ninjas here have a good affinity to fire manipulation. Same for the other 4 villages as well. As for the crystal veins, only one place still had some low-quality veins. That is the current Land of Iron. In order to prevent another war from happening for them, Lord First temporarily protected it. The daimyo soon reached a deal, and the Land of Iron became a neutral country without any ninjas who could use those crystal veins. Instead, the Land of Iron will mine a limited amount and sell a certain amount of it to each village. So, all the elemental crystals today are received from the Land of Iron. And it is received in very low quantities. Most of those elemental crystals are distributed among the clans. The rest is kept by the Hokage and is used to train the Umbu. Additionally, because their quality and quantity are low, they are only used alongside proper Fuinjutsu seals to be able to use 100% of those crystals. Fujin digested all this information. He analyzed, oh, guess it isn't as useful as I thought then. Without sufficient quantities, they won't be that useful. A/N, elemental crystals will play a huge role in one arc in the future. But it won't create a huge impact on the story. I do have some good ideas with this, but if I overdo it, it might not be Naruto anymore, lol. Fujin asked, does the effect of each crystal depend on our affinity? Renjiro nodded, yes. It works best with your affinity. Did you check all 5 rooms? Fujin nodded. Renjiro replied, good. The chakra paper used to test your affinity only shows your strongest affinity unless you have an elemental Keki Genkai. But trying to absorb energy from elemental crystals too can tell you your affinities. What was your absorption rate for other elements compared to wind? Fujin replied, it was around 35% for fire, around 6% for earth, and 0 for water and lightning. Renjiro appeared disappointed on hearing that. He sighed, seems like you don't have much affinity for other elements. Fujin acted disappointed and asked, what should it have been for me to have their affinity? Renjiro explained, if you have any element at 70% or above, then that can be considered as your secondary affinity. Your wind element affinity is quite strong. So most likely any element above 50% could have been considered a secondary affinity. As for tertiary affinity, it needs to be 30% or above. Your fire element qualifies for this. But I would recommend you to not waste your time on it. After all, it is extremely rare for a squad in Konoha to not have someone with fire affinity. Fujin nodded. Renjiro continued, even your earth manipulation. I would suggest you stop it after learning earth wall jutsu. Focus entirely on your wind manipulation. Make it as strong and lethal as you can. Fujin replied, yes sensei. Renjiro said, good. Now, let's get back to your training for the month. Fujin paid attention with some excitement. Training with Renjiro proved to be extremely fruitful. Renjiro chuckled and said, actually, I have nothing more to teach you. I have already taught you all the basics that I could. Rest would require hard work from you to improve further. Fujin gave his sensei a deadpan look. He asked, so what will be training for this month sensei? Renjiro smirked, we will be doing live combat practice. Fujin felt a chill down his spine on looking at his sensei's smirk. Renjiro continued, every time you spar or fight, you hide behind your clones. While that is a good strategy, and I admire the fact that you have managed to pull it off so successfully, you have missed out on an essential fighting experience that you will need in the future. So, for this entire month, we will do live combat drills. You can use your clones, but I will still attack your main body. By the time this month ends, I will let you experience everything that you would have to face during missions. Fujin nervously said, "All right, sensei." As soon as he said it, Renjiro attacked him with a punch. But Fujin, who was on alert due to Renjiro's smirk, flickered away in the blink of an eye. Renjiro smirked and flickered as well. The evening before the tournament, Fujin laid in the training ground, breathing heavily. If anyone were to see him, they would wonder, how many people beat him up. He was bruised all over and had completely exhausted his chakra. Renjiro walked over to him and said, "Ready for the tournament?" Fujin looked at him while screaming internally, "You know what? Fuck the child activists. Where the fuck are the human rights activists? In my previous life, if anyone leaked even a minute of my combat drills with this monster, the media would all create havoc for weeks. There might even be public protests against him. I didn't even get a break on my birthday. Bastard made me eat punches and kicks instead of cake." Unfortunately, Fujin had neither the energy nor the courage to talk back to Renjiro. Renjiro chuckled, lifted Fujin, and put him on his shoulder. He said, "Well, you can't fight in this state. Let's get you to the hospital to fix you up." Fujin didn't reply or struggle. In the last month, he was carried in this manner to the hospital 11 times. He had received all sorts of weird looks. Any sense of embarrassment was long dead and buried. On reaching the hospital, the medicnin healed him as usual and asked him to sleep in the hospital. While going to sleep, Fujin thought, no wonder all adults in this village are so shameless. It seems that they all had their sense of shame beaten out of them. Chapter 95, Gambling. The next morning, Fujin woke up early. He ate a few ration bars and did some light exercises before heading to the stadium where the tournament would be held. When he neared the stadium, he could hear multiple announcements being made over the loudspeaker. There were a lot of stalls outside the stadium. The area was very crowded. Fujin thought, it's almost like a fair. This world barely has any good means of entertainment. So I suppose the Chunin exams are the biggest entertainment for normal people. No wonder it's so crowded and noisy. On entering the stadium, a guard informed him where the participants had to gather. Fujin went there and saw that all the remaining genins were already there. He walked towards Miko and Hoka. "Hey." Both greeted him while smirking. Hoka asked, "So, how was your training?" Fujin sighed and was about to answer, but Miko spoke first, "No need to tell. We already know. Everyone was talking about a certain someone being carried to the hospital daily." Both Hoka and Miko began laughing. Fujin gave them a deadpan look. He muttered lightly but loud enough for them both to hear, "At least I was defeated by a Jounin instead of a fellow genin teammate." This interrupted their laugh. Hoka replied, "Last time you caught me by surprise. That will never happen again." Miko snorted and said, "Humph, I was injured by Hoka and you took advantage. This time you will have to fight more opponents first. I'll send you back to the hospital on Sensei's shoulder." Fujin smirked and was about to reply when Inoichi called them and asked them to assemble at the center of the ground. Announcements were made to introduce all 9 genins to the audience. While the announcements were made, Fujin noticed where Hiruzen was sitting. There were a few umbu around him. But there wasn't any other cage. Fujin analyzed, no genin from Suna qualified. So no wonder their cage didn't show up. And while Kiri Genins did qualify, they don't represent the 4th Mizu cage. I thought May might come, but it looks like either she's busy, or Hiruzen refused to host her publicly before she wins. Next, he checked out the important officials who were sitting with a few daimyos. He didn't notice anyone interesting there. Lastly, he looked at a spot where a lot of familiar faces were. He noticed Ibiki, Genma, and Rado sitting next to each other, with some papers in front of them, and wondered, are they the judges for the tournament? He recalled his discussion with Renjiro earlier. A week ago, in the training ground. Fujin was resting, having just fought Renjiro. Renjiro was sitting nearby as well. Fujin asked, who decides the Chunin promotions, sensei? Will it be just the proctor for the 3rd round, or do others also have a say? Renjiro answered, there will be a panel of judges who will evaluate your performances during the tournament. Their decision is the most critical for getting promoted. The proctors of the 3 phases will also submit reports of their evaluation. Promotions will be based on these evaluations. Their evaluations are sent to the Chunin exam supervisor, who makes the decision and sends it to the Hokage for approval. Fujin asked, Chunin exam supervisor? Who is that? Renjiro nodded, he is the one who makes decisions regarding the Chunin exams. The current Chunin exam supervisor is a retired elite Jounin. He is a few years older than the Sunins. Fujin thought and said, okay. But don't the Jounin instructors or anyone else get a say? Renjiro answered, the Jounin instructors can make recommendations. But it is very rare, as the Genins are their own students, and it could be seen as favoritism. As for others, there are a few who can make recommendations, such as the Jounin commander, Umbu commander, village elders, and clan heads. But again, it's very rare. They get more involved during the Jounin promotions. Fujin nodded, that makes sense. But sensei, you said that we have thousands of Chunins. But don't only a few Genins get promoted every year? While asking, Fujin wondered, it makes no sense for Chunin exams to be the only form of promotion. I wonder what other ways are to be promoted. Renjiro looked deeply at Fujin before answering, as the Hokage said, the Chunin exams are more about showing your skills, talent, and potential to the daimyos and other important people. Promoting the Genins isn't the main focus. If you observed, you would have noticed that all Konoha Genins participating were 15 years or younger. Fujin thought for a bit and said, yeah, I don't remember seeing any older Genin from our village. Renjiro continued, Genins above the age of 15 are promoted when they are deemed capable enough to be promoted without any exam. So there are around 100 Genins promoted every year. Even more during the war. But, Genins who get promoted outside the Chunin exams have a harder time becoming Jounin. Very few manage to become Jounin. Fujin digested the information and nodded while wondering, wasn't Kabuto much older during the Chunin exams? Did Konoha relax the restrictions later? His thoughts were interrupted by Renjiro, who said, enough rest, let's continue. Fujin got up and prepared himself for another round of beating. Back to the present. Fujin noticed that Renjiro, Genki, and a few dozen more Jounins and Chunins were sitting behind the judges. Miko and Hoka looked for their parents in the crowd. Apparently, some of their classmates also came to watch the tournament. None of the Genins were paying much attention to the announcements. However, one announcement suddenly attracted their attention. The announcer said, to make this tournament more exciting, the Gato Company has set up a gambling center for the tournament. The odds are Uchiha Miko, 1.2. Satsuma Rentaro, 1.4. Hyaga Hoka, 1.5. Sakai Yumi, 1.8. Yuki Shin, 1.8. Suzuki Fujin, 4. Matsushita Satoru 5. Shiro Sara, 5. Kido Kohaku, 9. Those who are still left to place your bets, you can do so within the next 15 minutes before the matches begin. Fujin was surprised, seriously? Gambling so openly? And Gato company? His eyes wandered towards Hiruzen and the place where the daimyos were sitting. How much of a cut do these guys get for letting someone like Gato do this? He analyzed the odds. Miko and Hoka come from strong clans. So this ain't a surprise. As for Kiri, it looks like they want to advertise their strength. Rentaro and Yuki Shin I can understand, but why are the odds for Yumi so high? Anyways, I have around 800,000 Ryo with me. Should I bet all on myself? I'm confident that I am the strongest, but my fights are the toughest too. I'll have to face Yuki and Rentaro who would be fresh. Then Miko, who would only have had one easy fight. For the last, I thought it'd be Hoka, but looks like he may have one tough fight against Yumi. While Fujin was analyzing, Miko couldn't hide her smirk due to having the highest odds. The other genins looked at her and realized that she would be the strongest opponent. Inoichi said, "All announcements are over. Go wait in the waiting room. Fujin, Shin, your matches will begin in 15 minutes." The genins begin walking towards the waiting room. Fujin after thinking for a bit concluded, while 800,000 Ryo is a decent amount of money, it is nowhere enough for me to buy some of the stuff that I want. So better to just gamble. I'll gamble 600,000 Ryo. 200,000 Ryo is sufficient for my normal needs. And even if I lose, earning that 600,000 back shouldn't be a big deal. That said, the gambling is held by Gato. So he should be very rich. Killing him won't be a good decision, but I should plunder him in the future. Since he operates illegally, I might get some good stuff from him. Not to mention a lot of Ryo as well. After deciding, he said softly, "I'll meet you guys in the waiting room." He flickered. The genins wondered where he went. Fujin flickered in the place where the bets were being taken. Surprisingly, the crowd here was very low, so few people. Wait, the announcements implied that many already placed their bets. So only the ones who didn't know yet are placing their bets now. Fujin withdrew 600,000 Ryo from his scroll and went ahead. The bookie was surprised at seeing a participant here. He greeted Fujin, "Hello Fujin-kun. How may I help you?" Fujin replied, "I want to place bets." He put 600,000 Ryo in front of him and said, 600,000 Ryo on myself." The bookie sneered internally on hearing that Fujin wanted to bet on himself. This orphan civilian ninja wants to bet on himself? The only reason why his odds weren't the lowest is that he broke the record in the second round thanks to his two teammates. However, he was shocked when he saw 600,000 Ryo being placed in front of him. He thought, are the genins so rich in Konoha? He immediately took the cash and handed Fujin 6 silver tickets with his name on them. Every silver ticket denoted 100,000 Ryo. Fujin checked it and left. After he left, that bookie began laughing. "He just donated 600,000 Ryo to us? Haha." Fujin entered and waited in the waiting room. This room gave the best view of the ground below. It will help the genins observe others properly. After a few minutes, an announcement was made calling Fujin and Shin down. Hoka and Miko said good luck to Fujin, while the Kiri genins wished Shin good luck. Fujin and Shin jumped down to the ground and walked towards Inoichi. Inoichi asked them both to take positions. Fujin and Shin stood face to face 5 meters apart. Fujin thought, ice release. This will be a tough fight. Shin thought, this guy is very fast. And his sword is very strong. I shouldn't give him a chance to use his sword at all. Inoichi announced loudly, now the first fight starts. Begin.